Welcome you all to e-learning platform. In week 4, you have learned lesson 1 and lesson 2 in a previous video. And in this video, we will discuss lesson 3 and lesson 4. In lesson 3, we will discuss major themes, symbols and characters. And in lesson 4, we will find out racism and ethical issues in Heart of Darkness. Me, Faisal Ahmed, as usual throughout this lecture with you. Let's begin. Literary criticism, almost 100 years old and familiar to generations of readers, Conrad's little book Heart of Darkness has lost none of its power to amaze an apple. It remains in many places an essential starting point for discussions of modernism, imperialism, the hypocrisies and glories of the West, and the ambiguities of civilization. Critics by the dozen have subjected it to symbolic, mythological, and psychoanalytic interpretation. T.S. Eliot used a line from it as an epigraph for The Hollow Man, one of his poems. And Hemingway and Faulkner, you know them, I think, are much impressed by it. As are Orson Welles and Francis Ford Coppola, who employed it as the ground plan for their cinema, despairing epic of Americans in Vietnam. The title of the cinema is Apocalypse Now. You can watch the cinema as well. Major themes in Heart of Darkness. Themes are overreaching ideas and beliefs that the writer expressed in the text, including poetry, fiction, and plays. Heart of Darkness has various themes which run parallel to one another. Joseph Conrad has used prominent recurring ideas wrapped in ambiguous language. Some of the major themes in Heart of Darkness have been in the next slides. So these are the major themes, the 10 major themes that I have collected and I have found in Heart of Darkness. Theme 1, imperialism, one of the major themes of Heart of Darkness. And the other themes are white man's burden, lack of truth, colonization, exploitation, racial discrimination, alienation and isolation, moral corruption, violence, and human greed and deception. Let's discuss it in broad. Theme 1, imperialism. One of the major themes of Heart of Darkness is imperialism. Imperialism is actually European colonization of countries from Asian and African continents for resources. However, it was hidden in the slogan of its spreading civilization. Marlowe accepts taking Africans' land from the people is not right. Kursi is in Congo pretending to civilize the people and was engaged in the ivory trade and involved in horrific ancient rituals of sacrificing humans to appease the native Africans. Marlowe describes the ravages of imperialism during his journey to the heart of Africa. Another prominent theme of the novel is irony of Marlowe's voyage and the purpose, that is, white man's burden. He journeys toward Congo to meet popular station manager Kurtz. Though Kipling's words, white man's burden, ring in his ears, he sees the opposite. The white man, including Mr. Kurtz, has been engaged in killing the natives to plunder the resources. There are heads erected on the poles around the station where Mr. Kurtz is staying. Marlowe believes that his voyage is a heavenly mission of a white man to spread the enlightenment of Christianity in the darkness. Another theme, lack of truth. The superficial themes of the novel are imperialism and cruelty of the European powers. However, the theme of the lack of truth lies at the heart of the text. All the European powers engaged in Africa are occupying their land and plundering resources while propagating it as a civilizing mission. So they are double standards. Marlowe says that several things are left out, and in his words, away from the truth of things. The ironic language used from the very start occasionally shows that Marlowe cannot speak the truth. He finally tells another lie to avoid disappointing Kurt's intended fiancée that Kurtz had said her name, his fiancee's name, before dying. Colonization. Colonization means establishing control over the indigenous people of a country or a place. This theme also runs parallel to diverse other themes in Heart of Darkness. In one of the situations, Marlowe, the spokesman of Conrad, clearly states that conquest of the earth means taking it away from those who have a different complexion. In other words, he is indicating that the Europeans think they are of a higher race. They destroy their land by the colonization and eventually steal Africa's resources. Exploitation. The ivory trade is the main trade throughout the Congo River. However, Marlowe does not clarify or accept the amount of brutal exploitation that happened in the name of trade. It is only mentioned in oblique words such as the horror and the postscript of Kurtz, exterminate all brutes, which points out the truth about the trade and the people involved. In fact, Marlowe is also the part of this exploitation, while locals are misled and mesmerized by Kurds. They are also enticed to attack the people not standing in line with the main agent Kurds, including the attack on the steamer carrying Marlowe. These attacks also caused death to locals more than their targets. The exploitation continued even after Kurt's death. Racial discrimination. The novel Heart of Darkness shows that racial discrimination is dominating in Africa and other parts of the world. Marlowe also understands that different complexions and flattened nose means Europeans were permitted to take the possession of the land from that race, black race. Marlowe too called the locals savages, including the intended of Kurds. She tells him how racial discrimination has led to the white man's action of making ideas of civilizing those savages in Africa, Congo. The words of Kipling, that is, white man's burden, echoes in the end when Kurz dies, speaking of the horror that he committed against the African people. That means the torture and exploitation. Alienation and isolation. Although alienation and isolation are often understood as a psychological issue of an individual, the novel Heart of Darkness has presented alienation and isolation of both psychological as well as social. Marlowe's departure hints to social alienation and isolation, which tries to rob him of his humanity. Kurtz is a prime example of this alienation in that he mixes up with the locals and tries to become one of them. His alienation completes with his final outburst of horrors when he comes to know the results of his actions. Marlowe's initial Buddha-like posture too confirms this alienation and isolation. Moral corruption, another theme of Heart of Darkness. Moral corruption is another underlying theme of the novel. Heart of Darkness. Kurtz goes to Congo to civilize the locals. However, he becomes a top agent of the company in robbing the locals of their treasure, and exporting ivory. He is engaged in corrupt practices of punishing those who oppose him and becoming their demigod. The same goes on at the other stations where Marlowe sees many small agents engaged in the same practices. Violence. There are two types of violence. The first one is provoked cruelty. For instance, Kurz incites the natives to attack the team carrying Marlowe. The second one is the violence among the natives and the heads on the sticks around Kurz's house. Here Kurz, who claims to change the savages, has become a savage. He uses violence to dominate the natives, to rob and punish them if they interfere in white men's business. Human greed and deception. Marlowe says that he has seen the devil of greed and the devil of hot desire, which refers to the ivory trade at the expense of the native Africans' freedom and life. The European companies have been competing against each other to extract treasures as soon as possible. Using violence, they go on killing spree and massacring the innocents. The pieces of evidence of this human greed and deception can be seen clearly when Kurz displays heads on the poles around his station. So that's the end of the major themes in Heart of Darkness. Now we'll go to discuss the symbols. Here you can see two pictures. On the left hand side you can see the Belgian city. The sepulchral city, here the name is figurative to represent the apparently white city, but inherently there is a moral degradation. And on the right hand side you can see a picture, the ivory trade in Congo, the white man and the black people of Congo during the beginning of the 20th century, the modern era. So let's discuss the symbols in Heart of Darkness. The first symbol is women. Marlowe believes that women exist in a world of beautiful illusions that have nothing to do with truth or the real world. In this way, women come to symbolize civilization's ability to hide its hypocrisy and darkness behind pretty ideas. Here you can see two portraits. One is the European fiancé of Mr. Kurz and the other is Mr. Kurz's black mistress in Congo. The sepulchral city, another symbol. The white sepulchral city symbolizes all of European civilization and their double standard. The beautiful white outside evokes the lofty ideas and justifications that Europeans used to justify colonization, while the hidden hollow inside the sepulchre hides the hypocrisy and desire for power and wealth that truly motivate the colonial powers. Dark and white. Darkness is everywhere in Heart of Darkness, but the novella tweaks the conventional idea of white as good and dark as evil. Evil and good don't really apply to Heart of Darkness because everyone in the novella is somehow complicit in the atrocities taking place in Africa. Rather, whiteness, especially in the form of the white fog that surrounds the steamship, symbolizes blindness or ignorance. The dark is symbolized by the huge and inscrutable African jungle and is associated with the unknowable and primitive heart of all men. Here you can see more pictures. On the left hand side there is a portrait of Mr. Marlowe that is illustrative, not the real one, okay. And on the right side you can see a picture taken from a cinema where you can see Mr. Kurz. That's not real Mr. Kurz, okay. So character analysis. Marlowe. Marlowe is a 32-year-old sailor who has always lived at sea. The novel's narrator presents Marlowe as a meditating Buddha because his experiences in the Congo have made him introspective and to a certain degree philosophic and wise. As a young man, Marlowe wished to explore the blank spaces on the map because he longed for adventure. His journey up the Congo, however, proves to be much more than a thrilling episode. Instead, his experiences that teach Marlowe about the heart of darkness found in all men. Many, like himself, suppress these evil urges, while others, like Kurz, succumb to them. So some people, like Marlowe, follows the good side of life, and some people, like Kurz, influenced by the bad sides, or involved in the sins. So Mr. Kurz, the character analysis, one of the most enigmatic characters in 20th century literature. I mean, the mysterious character. Kurz is a petty tyrant, a dying god, an embodiment of Europe, and an assault on European values. These contradictory elements combine to make Kurz so fascinating to Marlowe, and so threatening to the company, and also to the readers as well. Like Marlowe, Kurz also wished to travel to Africa in search of adventure, specifically to complete great acts of humanizing, improving, instructing, as he explains in his final report to the company, once he tasted the power that could be his in the jungle. However, Kurz abandoned his philanthropic ideals and set himself up as a god to the natives at the inner station. While he used to worry about the best ways to bring, as his painting demonstrates, the light of civilization to the Congo, he dies as a man, believing that the company should simply exterminate all the brutes. Kurz symbolizes the far end of where greed can take you. Kurz also represents the love of power the white colonizers have, as well as the influence they have over the natives. Kurz is the ultimate power at his inner station, and he sets himself up basically as the natives' god as far as ultimate influence goes. So lesson 4, racism ethical issues in Heart of Darkness. Okay. So I will discuss the racism and ethical issues very shortly in brief discussion. During the journey, Marlowe discovers a dark dilemma of moralities. Being overtaken by greed and imperialism, Marlowe discovers just how easy it is to become inhuman without a structured society of civilization. Greed is an important part of the abandonment of morals in this novel. The novel Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad has a strong theme of morality and racism as well. Conrad's goal using morality is moral confusion. The main character, Charlie Marlowe, sets out on a journey with the European ivory trade of Africa. During this journey, he also discovers the dark dilemma of moral ethics and racism. Being overtaken by greed and imperialism and racism, Marlowe discovers just how easy it is to become inhuman without a structured society of civilization. And that's the end of today's lesson, this video's lesson. Thank you very much for being with me throughout this lecture. Okay, goodbye.